Welcome to 1015 Yacht Rock Podcast.
Nice.
I bring you Case Aiken from the Men of Steel podcast as guest host today. Case, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just great, guys. This is some easy listening, some easy viewing, some positive vibes going out to the world.
And we have the professional optimist today, Jesse Fresk.
Everything's being flipped on its ear. It's the darkest timeline or the brightest timeline, whichever way you want to look at it.
Depends on if you're looking from the top or the bottom. Today, we are here to cover a request from Mr. Fresco.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to set us up for what's going down today?
Well, we were supposed to do this last week, and there was some schedule conflict, so we couldn't do it.
I got fired.
Seth got fired. Yeah. But you're doing better now. It was actually a sign from the gods above that you were actually meant to do so because your company is a giant fucking piece of shit. Why don't you go ahead and rant and run them into the ground, please? By all means, go right ahead.
Hey, listen, if you are a company and you tell people that they're part of a family and then after 10 years there they exit, you treat them like a piece of shit, you were lying the whole time.
Yeah.
And listen, dishonor on you, on your family, and on your cow. That's how I feel.
May a pox be upon your family. So today we are here to talk about something that just had its 20th anniversary. Again, we were supposed to do this last Friday, which was literally the 20th anniversry. Had some schedule conflicts, and so now we're talking about the reimagined Battlestar Galactica, which aired 20 years ago on NBC on 2 nights. It was the miniseries was 3 hours long, and it launched a series that spanned 4 seasons. Technically, they say it's 5 seasons, so they can get syndication.
Right.
So they split the last season in half. And so it spawned this massive series that runs really great for a while and then peters off and tanks at the last season. But we're not going to talk about that. We're just talking about the miniseries today.
Wait, are you talking about Game of Thrones? What was the topic again today?
God damn it, there are crossovers between this and Game of Thrones. Oh, man. So, yeah, we brought in Case Aiken, once again, back your old standby. Because I suggested this, and you said that you'd be interested in talking about this. So, Case, what's your history with Battlestar Galactica? How did you get into this series?
Well, first off, I should say that for all joking aside at the beginning, this is not like, while it's an enjoyable piece, this is not yacht rock of movies. we were just talking about the genre and how it would equate for film. And no, this is not. This is very much like post 9/11. Let's be sad. It's great,
boy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's great post 9/11. Let's be sad. Like, let's be clear about that one. So, I think we're all kind of like 80s 90s babies here, and like in terms of my appreciation for sci-fi, a lot of ways is the birth of the Sci-Fi Channel, and so at the time it was just hungry for anything science fiction, anything it could get the rights to. So I definitely watched a bunch of the OG Battlestar Galactica. It wasn't a show that was on in any regularity where I was like clear on what episode order I was watching it in, or like where in the story I was like, dipping in, and like at some point there was like some kind of like primer special that was like, here's the what you need to know kind of thing that ran. And I was like pretty familiar with Battlestar before this show came out. And I was curious when it was coming out. Now, I didn't watch it when it launched. It was sort of in this like black hole of when I was in college, and like it was just hard for me to like watch like live TV at the time.
Oh yeah. Dude, we're spoiled by the internet today. Holy shit.
Yeah,
right?
Seasonal dumps have spoiled all of us.
Yeah, so this was around the time where like I jumped in season 2 of the show, and then immediately bought the DVD. So really, like my experience of it was really much more actually right after I graduated college, like when I was like waiting tables and I like had just like a shitload of free time because I hadn't figured out what my life was at that point. Not that I have now, but at the time I had no idea. And so
with a wife and a kid, still hasn't figured it out.
Well, yeah.
I'm still figuring it out. I don't know. I'm making the shit up as I go along.
But certainly at the time I had zero clue, and so this was like kind of a revelatory thing to have, like just because I had these big chunks of time. I'd get home and I could I was working late, so like my schedule was all messed up, and so I dove into the series, and I loved season 1 and 2, and season 3 and 4 have highs and lows for me. Even the finale has big highs in it.
Looks amazing. Holy shit, that last battle's great.
Lot of amazing stuff going on there. And what's great is even in the finale, we are still getting things that this show and this miniseries specifically really brings into sci-fi. Because in addition to, like, while I missed when this came out like on TV, it's part of a lineage of sci-fi stuff. This like whole Canadian shot realistic physics kind of sci-fi that had Firefly right before it, which I did watch, although I also staggered, but that was like my senior year of college DVDs. And then like before that, Space Above and Beyond, which I watched the shit out of when it was on TV because I was in high school and a nerd. And like, yeah, man, like that was a great series for that.
And there was also like Stargate was going on at the same time, and Farscape was going on. There was tons of sci-fi going on.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine was like my going to bed show throughout. It was like Deep Space Nine and Frasier, and then go to sleep every night, like my senior year of high school. Like it was.
Ooh.
Great.
Yeah, it was just like this wonderful time to be a nerd, like Babylon 5. So a lot of the lineage going into it, and I was intimately familiar with what this is arguably a counterpiece to, which is Star Trek Voyager. Which we'll definitely talk about. But what this does in a way for sci-fi that no other piece before has, and I was just amazed by, is to have the Battlestar be a Battlestar. While it is an aircraft carrier, it is a battleship. And it is a ship that will take a beating, and like there's an impact for the people inside, and it's got guns. And you know what? That is different from the original, and that is different from most sci-fi. Like, yeah, sure, you've got the Enterprise, and it'll have a face-off, but it's like a beam coming out of a saucer. It's not just a wall of cannons just popping up out of nowhere and having like shells and a blade of armor. Like, we are talking about all the dreams that they had for Enterprise, all the dreams that they had for Voyager. This show actually realized in a very real way, and it was just fantastic. And I immediately absorbed it and loved it, and was caught up in time for season 3 and 4, and experienced it all. And even with the sour taste of the finale, which like I said has pros and cons to it, I love it, and I want to talk about it always.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry, my camera died for like half a second.
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if you were aware, and so like
no,
when
I
you just came in,
I heard everything. My camera just crapped out. I don't know. It's probably just like a hiccup in my internet or something.
Yeah,
like that
would have been the perfect cover of like I intentionally like finished my point, and like when you were back, and it was like a good spot, and then you're like,
and then
okay, cool. Like if that was an ad lib, like not to heap praise on it, but if you Ronald Reagan the situation, like I would have been so impressed.
Jeez. Oh god. But yeah, there's
Mr. Gorbachev.
Oh god. Yeah. So
I didn't see the game, but I was just able to describe it to everyone.
God. So yeah, I saw this back when I was in college. I was just like, I did not have a good time in my first year of college. I was very lonely and depressed. I hated it. And I was just like finding anything I could do just like to keep my mind occupied while I was doing classes.
Incredibly familiar situation.
Yeah. And I just stumbled across like an episode on Sci-Fi Channel. I think it was in the 3rd season. It was the new Caprica storyline where they try to colonize a random planet and they try to build a new world. Just like, fuck Earth. We're just going to just stay here. We found a place we can live. Let's try it here.
It's good enough.
And it's good enough. It's just barely good enough. And then I think it's the moment when the Galactica jumps into the atmosphere and is just dropping like a rock.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that was my first exposure. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is great.
That's a good sequence.
It's the whole that whole like arc of 4 episodes is fucking great, man. It's great. It's like straight up occupation of Iraq. They switch the roles. The Americans are Iraq, and the Americans are the Cylons, and the all the humans are now the people of Iraq. They completely switch the roles, and it completely works. Yeah, it's really good. And that was my first exposure. I was like, what is this? So I went out to Best Buy, got the miniseries. They had it on DVD, and I still got it. And I went back to my dorm room, and I watched it. I immediately went back out to Best Buy and bought the first 2 seasons. And I just started binging. I was like, this is awesome. This is so good. Yeah.
Were you mad when you realized that the first season came with the miniseries?
Yes, I was. But I, now I guess it's a collector's item or whatever. I have everything, even the bad stuff like the miniseries, The Plan, which is dog shit.
Oh God, what was that?
Nobody likes The Plan. Nobody likes The Plan. Seth,
like I said, I can champion the finale, The Plan. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, Seth, if you ever finish this series, do not watch The Plan.
Deal. Okay.
It undoes everything. All the mystery from the first 2 seasons, gone. They explain it. Like, there's one character that shows up in like episode 6. He's like 6 degrees separation, where Baltar gets accused of spying on the humans and is like caught in the computer room on Caprica. And it's a character played by Caprica 6, and she's playing a different character, and she accuses him, and he's like, no, she's lying. She's making this up. And by the end of the episode, she just disappears, and Baltar has been absolved of his crimes. It's apparently a fake video, but her glasses are still on the CIC table. And it's like, so was she real or was she not real? The Plan says there's an extra scene afterwards that just says, oh, she just got chucked out in airlock. No, she's gone. No, it's fine.
Wow. Okay.
They just undid everything. Every moment of mystery in the first season, gone.
Yeah,
wow.
And it's such a misnomer because it's called The Plan when really
there is no plan.
Yeah, it's a revelation that there is none. Okay.
Which is a revelation of the writing staff that there was no plan.
Yikes.
They didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
An admittance of guilt. Oh, no.
Admittance of guilt, yeah. But we're not talking about the rest of the series. We'll probably jump into the rest of it later on. For right now, I want to stick with the miniseries. Seth, you just watched this for the first time after my insistence you needed to watch it. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, okay, so I was like vaguely familiar with it. My brother is a big Battlestar fan. He and our like next door neighbor growing up were into it at the same time as you guys were here, as it was coming out kind of around their like, high school and college age. So like I was kind of tangentially familiar, but I had never given it like the full go. And so getting into it, I was a little shell-shocked. Like I'm realizing like how soft Star Trek and even Star Wars can be as like flagship cinema when, like you guys are describing, the Battlestar it's like a warlike human species in space.
Yeah.
Not as like a dumbed down thing, but or a critique of it, but like
it's designed for combat, nothing more.
We fucking do space combat. Like just take that seriously. And so I was not like I was going in expecting more of a like kind of character archetype driven thing, and was instead like, oh shit, people are just dropping. Okay, people are dying. Okay, never wait a second. And like I'm running to catch up, and that was kind of the charm for me, was the way I felt like I was thrown into a battle that was too big for me. Like I felt like you can really associate with the characters in recognizing that this world is just so infinitely bigger than them. Even though the situation is like small by the end of it, it's a single ship that's escaping back, but that still feels like monumental. Like we are the rest of humanity. We are like burdened with glorious purpose, kind of shit. And I'm like, wow, okay. Not Star Trek, not Star Wars. Got like I'm like got my list out. I'm like Battlestar is its own thing. Wow, okay. So that was. Yeah, new flavor punched me in the face.
Well, the main executive producer on the show and writer was Ronald D. Moore, who worked at Star Trek for years. He was one of the main guys over on Deep Space Nine. So this is in many ways a response to Star Trek, and he was in the Navy. He did serve on an aircraft carrier. Yeah. So this is just his experiences. Like all of the things that you see, like all the nicknames they give to people, like, all the technicians and engineers on the flight deck, they're called knuckle draggers. Like that's right from his time in the Navy. Like he served he's seen all this stuff, he's done all this stuff. And so he just applied it to this. And there's a lot of old Battlestar fans that don't like this new series, and they refer to it as Geno, Galactica in name only.
But they did work to like bring that around too. That was a lot of that was based on the miniseries specifically, which fair, you know what? Like, because it's taking the property.
It is not like the original show,
right?
Yeah.
The original show is very similar to Star Wars.
It is. It came out a year after Star Wars.
Yeah, no, like there were even lawsuits involved in terms of like, was this actually like a ripoff of it? So it's taking a property and molding it, and they do a lot of really good work in terms of making it fit better later. What was it? Blood and the other mini, like the other movie that came out, where it's
the prequel, with young Adama. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
Blood Chrome.
Yeah, like so there's like a lot of work and like in that, like the classic Cylons are in there way more, and we see that they're the old models, and here like all the ships are still in play. They're just the old versions of it, which they exist and they kind of they work with it all. But it is really trying to mold it. Specifically, it's molding it in response to Star Trek Voyager, because more came over to Voyager when Deep Space Nine concluded. And Deep Space Nine, you can see the through line of Deep Space Nine to this, where it's like, how do we take sci-fi and like add this like veneer of reality and the compromises,
the Dominion War, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Like the Defiant is a very similar ship.
It's
to
a combat
the Battlestar ultimately.
It's small, it's cramped, it's designed for combat.
Yeah, there's a mess hall. It's all those details that are like real to ships, but they just don't show on Star Trek. Like they're like focusing on it in that. So when he moved over to Voyager after Deep Space Nine ended, I forget the name of the episode, but if you know season 6 of Voyager, I believe it was, the episode I'm talking about. They find another Starfleet vessel out in the Delta Quadrant, and it's like it's been going through some stuff because it's like completely on its own, and they've had to make a lot of compromises and fix their ship a lot of times. Whereas the Voyager has always been,
there's no crew. It's monitored by an AI. Yeah, it was.
Well, or there's some crew, but it's like they've made every extreme choice on that one, and it's like so it's so it's so pushed so far, but they don't allow those interesting choices to be brought over to Voyager. So Moore wrote that episode and was trying to get his thoughts about like, well, this is what we could do in Star Trek in a situation where they're so far away from the Federation, from their resources. Like, why aren't you letting it happen? Like Voyager, for all of the lip service it pays to them being stranded, doesn't feel different than any other Star Trek series. Like even to the point where they have like a fake like currency in it based on like credits for their like for the replicators, but it never really amounts to anything besides like some jokes about a wager or two about a few things, which is effectively the same as Latinum in Deep Space Nine, or for whatever, you make up your thing. It's a MacGuffin that they use on the ship in terms of like some kind of like trade value, which can just exist just fine. Like the whole like we've evolved past money doesn't mean you can't have things of value that you are trading for. Like that,
sure, absolutely. Bartering still exists.
Even Star Trek moved away from that. Like there's no money in the future. If you look at the recent shows of Star Trek, they kind of brought that back.
You have to have something because it's just part of the conversation, even if it's favors. Like there's going to be some sort of system of trade that's in play, because that's just a thing that people do and kind of enjoy doing. So like that was always going to be a part of the world. And anyway, so more wanted to have
you gotta give strippers something. So
Well, but so Moore wanted all of that to be in Voyager, and he was shot down so much that he quit the show in rage and didn't want to work with Star Trek anymore. And he had been on Star Trek since like season 2 or doing rewrites maybe of TNG, if not even 3. It was when they had the open call stuff.
The open call stuff. Scripts. He pitched a script called The Bonding, and that was his first television credit ever, and he just kept working with them as a script editor, and they joined up as the writing room.
And probably some of the drama was also that Brennan Braga had become the head of Voyager at that point. He was like the head writer or exec producer, whatever the title was, but he was like in charge by that point in Voyager's process. And he had come in as sort of like a little brother type to Moore. So like there was also some of that dynamic of like, well, he's being shot down, and probably the person who he kind of groomed into that role and into a position of like creative control is now the person that he's directly butting heads with. Like that, probably had additional sting. But so when you look at what Voyager was in comparison to what Star Trek in general was, and then you look at Battlestar Galactica, which is taking a lot of the same exact circumstances of, well, we're a ship in stranded space, we're being hunted by a force, we've got all these things that are like, we're very alone, we're going through this diaspora narrative. They are clearly being like, well, what's fun about that? What can we lean into? Especially because everyone's bummed out right now because 9/11 just happened.
Right.
And they just lean hard into that.
I'm still kind of shocked the show got greenlit because it's like straight 9/11.
Well, but we were so into 9/11 porn. We're enjoying this even because it's 9/11 porn. Like,
true,
I know you can go too far, and I know there was a
certain
point we were done. But like, this was fresh and authentic at the time.
But it doesn't have. It's not like a pro military of like, let's go fight. It's like, no. It's like the ending of the show is like, we lost. Let's run.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much the opposite. It's like, I mean, although I don't really know Ron Moore's politics very well, but he does seem to lean liberal, but there are episodes where it's like, okay, that comes off as right wing. Like the Cylon torture episode, the Guantanamo Bay episode, there's that one. There's
well, the new Caprica stuff like has like the whole conversation about like terrorism and when is it justified. I would argue that what they're
the
deliberately
suicide
doing,
bombings. The one, what was the one? It's where the Cylon sympathizers that are on the Galactica.
Oh,
and they try what's it called?
That's
sabotage the
season
ammunition.
3, right?
Mm-hmm. No, that's
season 1. Oh, shit, you're right. Yeah.
There's that guy that's like the leader of them, and then when he's trying to make his case towards Adama just throttles his fucking throat, and it's like,
Jesus.
Yeah.
Who do you want to support here? You want to support the guys that want to try to establish peace with the Cylons after they tried to wipe out the human race, or do you want the guys with the big guns? Let's go with the guys with the big guns. Like, so it very much has like a right leaning slant to some episodes. I'm like. But there is part of me, it's like, isn't the military kind of fucking cool? They are saving your ass.
Yeah.
So,
It's tough situations.
I like too that from what I got to observe in the miniseries, it doesn't seem to shy away from really tough situations like that, where like the split of good and bad is not as, clear cut, and like characters make fucked up decisions and like pay dearly for that. It feels like there's real stakes for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, like I think a comparison could be made with like 24, for example, especially with the dynamic with President Roslin.
Yeah,
like
because
she constantly, and in the miniseries, she is definitely set up as like the force for good in this situation, the mom for humanity, as it were, for this whole thing. Like, but she is forced to contend with her morals. She is forced to make hard decisions at points when they have to make the jump and leave those like slower than FTL ships behind. Like that's a big choice she has to make. Scene. And frankly, that is a decision she, as the civilian leader of the populace, has to make quite a few times. And that's the challenge. Like they're putting forward, like, here's the military type who has to like decide, like, has to hold back the violent impulses. Like this whole thing is about him not going into the fight. He's like, we have to go make babies because like that, it's learning to temper it, but like having to temper it by sometimes going too far and sometimes not going far enough and getting burned for it. And meanwhile, we have the same sort of thing with the civilian side. And like, I think that's the conversation people were looking to have in this window of time, which is why I compare with 24, where Bauer is very much like the Adama role, and what I forget the president's name, but Allstate,
the Allstate guy.
Like
that guy.
Yeah, he was the president. He, he's like very much like somehow Obama right before Obama actually happened, because you can see how much the zeitgeist was looking for that. Like, he's, he was a senator who like was aware of some stuff, but he was running on a real platform of, it's like literally it's the Obama like platform 6 years earlier, which is like kind of creepy when you like in terms of,
doesn't he get assassinated in this
ultimately? Yes, but like
I've never watched 24. I just saw it was like, okay, this is right wing horse shit. I'm not watching this crap.
But like the point of that was like, well, sometimes we have to go so far, and 24 is a less elegant piece that I think is less interested in having that conversation. But I think it is a conversation we were having to different degrees of like, how far do we push a person? What is too far? When have we crossed the line? When are we worse people for it because we crossed that line? Or, like all this stuff because we were feeling this pain nationally speaking.
Yeah. You cross the line when apparently you can fly from Los Angeles to DC in a helicopter in less than 24 hours.
Right.
There was a lot of those apparently on that show. It was like, how'd you get to that place that quickly? All right, whatever. Doesn't matter.
I don't mean to derail us into a 24 Galactica. It was just like,
we're not talking about that. I've never watched the show. I've seen clips. That's all.
The thing that is interesting about Battlestar Galactica is that they wanted to test the characters and not necessarily like come down on one side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like Baltar in the original show is like straight evil. Why? It's just I turned on the human race. Why? I don't know. He just did.
We needed a human on the bad guy side.
We needed a human to turn on the it's like, but why does Baltar do it in this one? Well, he really didn't. His dick got hard one day for Trisha Helfer. That's really it. That's literally it. Like he just, the trial of Gaius Baltar in the 3rd season is probably one of the other great arcs I love in that show. It gave Apollo something to do in the later seasons.
Right.
He He really doesn't do much in the later seasons. He really doesn't. You could jettison that character and I wouldn't even notice.
A little bit, yeah.
Well, and it's like what is there for a fighter pilot to do at peacetime? Even Pearl Harbor is like it has to invent a love story to give them something to do for the first half.
I'm in such a weird spot right now because like if
should we tell him? Should we tell him what happens to him?
No, I don't think we should. I think we can say.
Are you going to continue watching the show, Seth?
Not within the like near future. I'll put it that way.
All right,
maybe at some point.
Let's just tell him
for the sake of the episode.
So they encounter another ship. It is a more advanced ship that just barely avoided being like affected by the Cylon thing. It's like it's its whole story about how it survives.
The Pegasus.
The Pegasus. Yeah, it is way more advanced. It is commanded by Admiral I forget her name.
Admiral Akbar.
But the point is it's an admiral. It's actually a reference to the original show, which is one of those scenarios that's like, okay, Kane.
Kane,
Admiral Kane. So
played by Michelle Forbes, who played Ensign Rowe in Star Trek.
Right, yeah. So like fully in the Star Trek kind of vein here. So she's this badass, but like has made way more like compromises, has really like gone far, is like torturing Cylons sexually. Like it's like really going into a bad space. And so
it's Guantanamo Bay tactics. Like
Jesus Christ.
There's a moment when the boomer Cylon has been arrested and they're gonna gang rape her in order to get information out of her. Whoa.
Yeah.
Those later seasons get really dark.
It gets real dark. And it's really interesting because like it does come down on this all being very bad. So the crew of the Galactica ultimately it's sort of a coup. It ends up it's way more complicated than that. And I don't want to really explain too much of the detail, but it ends up with Adama becoming promoted to admiral and commanding 2 Battlestars. Whereas like in the original show, that the Pegasus like was a 1 episode kind of thing. It's a 6th Ranger shows up and then dies so that the status quo doesn't get disrupted too much kind of situation.
Sure.
And instead they're like, well, what if we actually have it? And so for the back half of season 2 and the front half of season 3, they've got the Pegasus. And so they've got 2 ships and the Pegasus is way more advanced. For one thing, it has the ability to make its own Vipers. It like has like engineering bays where it can create Vipers. So they're able to restock because like one of the things about the show is that every episode opens with the current count of humans left alive. Every single episode tracks how many nukes are still in play and how much ammunition they have. When a baby is born, the count goes up by 1, but a lot of episodes it goes down by like 15 periodically. And so every episode they're tracking this because it's that severe. There are points where they run out of water and we have to track that. Like it's all about like hard mode resource, like tracking while in space and like where it's
the stuff that Voyager should have done.
Right.
Has this ever been turned into like? Yeah. Has this ever been turned into like an RP setting before?
Must have. It must have. I mean, for these kind of rules already like just generally exist in a lot of RPGs, but like it must have for Battlestar because like they have like these kind of rules in like even like the Star Wars like handbooks. Like it's just no one uses it because like, oh my god, can you imagine being that fucking DM? But so they've got the Pegasus.
Star Wars is just fucking magic. Like, you know, that's the problem with that one is that this is for the first like 2.5 to 3 seasons. It's hard sci-fi.
Yeah, like the nuclear weapons they have are like really important, and like are the nukes that we have today. It's like, oh well, we've got 2 nukes, and like when we even like bring it out, it's a big deal. Like there's so many standoffs where it's just like, are we going to use one of like our fucking kill everything things? Because like a lot of the ships are going to take a hit and they're going to die because not everything's radiation shielded. Like we're in the battleship, guys, but no one else is. Like
I mean, and that also shows how powerful the Galactica is. Like it takes a hit from a nuke and it just like scratches it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
that scratch stays.
Built. Yeah, it's
like that's
all that damage stays.
Yeah. So it's that is the appeal of the show, where it's just like, well, how fucking badass hardcore can we get with a story that makes you want to stick with it?
Right.
So Apollo becomes the commander or gets promoted to commander, which weird captain commander is like flipped in this setting. But so he gets promoted to commander of the Pegasus. So they've got this much more advanced ship. They're able to restock everything. All this happens. They find a world that they can settle down on temporarily. There's a time jump. And so like the Adamas are not doing so hot, like because they're fighters. Like in peacetime, everyone gets lazy.
Lee got fat.
Yeah.
He puts. They have a whole vignette on the DVD where they show him putting on a fat suit, and he just like his cheeks are all puffy, and it's just it's kind of funny.
Somehow he gets
cute.
married to a character that you
chipmunk.
would not imagine him getting married to, like all these relationships.
Duala. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for saying it
get
out
that.
loud. But like all the relationships get flipped around. It gets so weird after this time jump. And then the Cylons show up. And they show up just out of nowhere. And the Battlestars have to jump because they don't even have like a crew like in position to like arm themselves, let alone do anything. And so most of humanity is left on a planet and under Cylon occupation. And the two Battlestars leave with like skeleton crews, and they're like, "What the fuck are we gonna do?" And so they do manage this like wild like freeing of everyone. It's intense. It involves like a lot of
that's
like
the Galactica jumping in and falling. It's not built for that. It's not built for air combat. It's only built for space combat.
Right. It is not meant to be in an atmosphere. That is not a thing that's supposed to be there. It's a pretty intense like opening of season 3. And then like so then the ship continues. They lose the Pegasus. And once you lose the Pegasus, he has no actual character arc after that point. Like, he's kind of just there. The stuff has sort of happened. He's just
He kind of becomes. Is he Baltar's defense? And he's Baltar's defense.
They come up with a thing for him. But that's sort of it, which is that he becomes the character, and that's had already
like
happened.
Jag, like Jag rules.
A little bit.
It's Jag. Yeah, it's Jag. It's just Jag. Yeah, that's all it is.
He's the plucky son character, so he's always the one to do that kind of thing. Like
he's Maverick from Top Gun, but if you take him out of a fighter craft, he doesn't have anything to do.
I would say he's more Iceman.
Yeah, okay.
Like
he looks like young Tom Cruise though.
Sure, but Starbuck is Maverick really. Like that, and that's the dynamic that those two have. And she also has her own very weird arc. And the show just like season 3 and 4 is just kind of weird. Or rather, I'd argue season 3 is kind of weird and season 4 is kind of there. And then
season 4 is kind of there.
Yeah.
It's kind of there and kind of a mess.
Because the finale didn't really matter related to like most of what happens to season 4. It just kind of was like, well, we need to have episodes, and most of it's like, it's there and it's fine.
I mean, it was nice. It was nice that what's the actress that plays Kira from Deep Space Nine shows up as a character. That was kind of cool.
Huh.
She's there. So like she's in the cancer ward, and Rosalind's cancer is back, and she's like they're having a heart to heart while Rosalind's like in the last days of her life. It's like it's a nice scene. It's just like. It's pointless.
Yeah, Lucy Lawless shows up as a Cylon, which is like
when she showed it was great. It's not a great episode where she shows up, but it's like
no, but she's a fun character in general.
Oh,
like,
she's a great character. Yeah,
you know, they do some really cool stuff with a lot of the characters. Like it's the series is overall like a net positive, even with the limitations of the later parts. And season 1 and 2 are so strong that like when you're looking back on the show, you're like, oh fuck, that was great. And that's why we're looking at the miniseries, which is such a strong encapsulation of so many of those themes. Like so many of the points that we get to in the show that are the reasons we really like it. Like the pilot is so good. Like not this, but like the first episode of season 1, 33. Yeah. It's so good. Yeah. People talk about it all the time. I brought it up when we were talking about Revenge of the Sith. Like it's just like one of those movies where it's like, man, that's a great component of the movie. Like it's just such a solid piece in general. And like, or rather of the story. Like it's such a solid piece of like, here's the human cost to these kind of action sequences if we really play it out. Like how tired can you get people in this situation, in this impossible sci-fi thing?
Yeah.
And the show starts off with that. You know, or the miniseries starts off with that.
Yeah, while we're on the topic of Star Wars, so Seth, let's talk about The Last Jedi for a second. So, you know how we said that that whole film is inspired by 33? Do you see how they should have done it?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like that would have been way more visceral. Holy shit.
Yeah, like why was that so hard? They did this shit in 40 minutes and they couldn't do that shit in 2.5 hours.
Right. Just keep cutting back to them way more tired. Like that it's been
just make them exhausted.
Yeah.
Like all this infighting bullshit doesn't lead to anything on those ships.
Right.
It really, when you watch that episode 33, which is kind of like a revamp, you can just start from there and keep going. It kind of like catches you up enough to follow the show.
Yeah,
like,
no, totally.
Like if you just watch that episode, you're like, yeah, why did they just do that for Revenge of the Sith? For Last Jedi? Why did they just do that?
Sorry, I meant Last Jedi when I said Revenge of the Sith earlier. Like exactly. Like it's the point. Like that whole that's how you do it fucking chase in space.
Right.
Yeah. If you're gonna say that they're running out of fuel. By the way, if ships run out of fuel in space, shouldn't they just keep moving?
Right.
You know what? It doesn't even matter. None of that shit matters. It's Star Wars rules. Star Wars space is like normal air. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's the same movie that has bombs drop, and you know what? Like, I actually think that's the best of the new trilogy.
Fuck yeah!
Like, anyway, back to the miniseries, because the miniseries is so goddamn cool. Like,
it's so good.
I mean, Seth, in terms of being introduced to the series, like that, it's a oneer, right? Like following Kara, like throughout the main stage of the Galactica. Like, that's so cool. Like, setting the whole thing up, and it's got such a great soundtrack for this whole thing. Like, that drum score is so good. Like, just really solid stuff going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, going into this, did it impress you how like they was like, wow, they did this on television in 2003? Did that really like shock you?
I don't know if it shocked me. Like, I'm definitely so I was very interested in what NBC was doing on TV at this time. This was like your Heroes experiment. This was NBC was really like testing the waters on a lot of cool stuff, like having movies play on TV within their like regular programming. And so I think the most impressive part about this to me is that it's not like totally kidified. There's a level to Star Trek that like I saw a clip recently where Data is discussing terrorism with Picard in one of the episodes, and like, when is it okay to enact violence if you're under authoritarian rule. And I went back to like rewatch the episode and was kind of had the miniseries in mind when I was watching it and going like, this was really kind of made for a 10-year-old to sit down and watch and track along with, versus Battlestar having like a very like, no, this is Saving Private Ryan in space. Like please strap in, don't bring your kids. That was what like really shocked me, was that like NBC went kind of hardcore here. Like, this is kind of like balls to the wall stuff for what we now recognize as being a very like, kind of universal, Jurassic Park kind of led company. I think it's cool that they go this hard. Like, there's so much sex. There's so much sex. Yeah. There's so much violence.
Oh yeah, like they get real close to getting like full frontal nudity on Tricia Helfer.
Yeah,
so many times.
like they wanted. I think that's
and
what
all
I
the sisters
respected.
are like, you know what? We should be upset about this, but you know what? We also want to see it.
Yeah, and by the way, this is her first acting role.
Really?
She's so good in it.
Yeah, she played like a dead body on CSI at one point, and like that was it. And like she was willing to do all this, and they actually
oh, that's right. She was a model first.
She was a model,
yeah.
And she actually got like Model of the Year or something like that. And she was like horribly embarrassed by it. Apparently she's very shy in real life. But in acting, she's like very open about everything. And one of the things they did was that's not her actual hair color. She actually has like brown hair, and they would bleach it every time she came in. And they bleached it so much her hair started to fall out. And she was in the trailer one time, and she was in tears, crying on the floor. And the producer came in and just like saw her on the floor, and he was like, "We're getting you a wig." So they then in the second season forward, it's all a wig, but you can't even tell.
Yeah.
So. The only way you can tell is because they'll have other models of her show up with like her natural hair.
And it doesn't look quite right.
Well, no, with her natural hair, and that'll pop up. Because her natural hair, it's like a very light brown,
a dirty blonde.
Yeah. Like. It's kind of like a Melissa Benoist playing Supergirl kind of situation.
Yeah, it's that.
Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Is it Benoist?
Benoist. I think it's Benoist. I know the ST is pronounced.
Okay.
But I think it's Benoist. But
Interesting.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Not the point.
Not the point. But yeah. Yeah, the fact that they went all in and making it like, yes, this is for adults. This is not for kids. Although they try to shove a fucking kid into the show.
Well, that's funny because that's like there's a
that's
equivalent
the one
kid.
callback they have to the original show. Do you know what it is, Seth?
What?
The kid. The kid. Like
the kid.
Where it's
Foxy,
like we have a new crew member. Like it. And it's so funny because he is like gone the second we get to the show.
Oh yeah, like third episode, he's fucking.
He makes
gone.
a cameo in the first season, and then he is out of there. And it was just that was like that. people like the apparently extremely adult situation that we'd created. They didn't respond well to the kid.
No.
Notes have been made. All right, moving on.
Because every show in the 70s had to have a fucking kid to relate back to the kid audience. You don't really want kids around your 9/11 paralleled show.
Right.
Yeah. So they very quickly jettisoned that shit. Boxy's out. He was on one of those ships that got blown up. It's fine. Doesn't matter. Yeah. The one thing that is interesting about the entirety of the show, where is the bottomless box of tobacco coming from? Because Jesus Christ, every fucking episode, there's more fucking cigarettes.
I mean, they have a very large cargo hold that was previously not
just
holding
one
anything.
big ship out there just filled with cigarettes.
Well, I mean, they didn't have bullets in their ship when like this all started. So like, what do you think was in there? It's like, oh yeah, well, we had a fuck ton of whiskey and tobacco.
That's what they had in that storage station. Bullets, bombs, and tobacco and whiskey.
That's
what they had.
Speaking of which, Seth, there is an episode where they start to run out of alcohol and they have to figure out how to start making moonshine.
That's awesome.
It's so good.
See, I dig that.
They're running out.
We're gonna be moonshiners in space, boy.
I mean, even for as bad as the worst episode is,
Black market.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Even that at least is like dealing with the idea that like there would be this sort of like currency set up in the background of like moving like resources around for people who are unscrupulous for whatever system they have. No, it's a bad episode. It's just, I'm saying that like the idea that there would be a black market is not a bad one.
Okay. I mean, the when it involves like the human trafficking element, that's when it's like, okay, now it's serious. But then it's like, they're trafficking kids. It feels like a cheap shot.
That's all bullshit. Wars. But like the idea that like cigarettes will move from like one ship to another is like not that weird.
It's true. It's fair. Whenever I do a rewatch on the show, I get to the black market episode and I just kind of stop.
Oh, the structure is garbage, and the fact that Apollo is a detective for some reason in the episode doesn't make any sense. It's the worst version of him being like also a lawyer. It's like, well, but what if he is also like a detective investigating this whole black market situation? Because
they Obi-Wan Kenobi'd him.
They Obi-Wan Kenobi'd him. Yes.
Why is this all of a sudden film noir? And why is our guy like? He's still a fighter pilot at that point, right? He's still a captain. Like,
he's the CAG.
Yeah, like what are you doing here, man? Like, this is not like you assign a person to do this. Like, this is not your job.
Kara Thrace should have been doing it.
It makes more sense, yeah, because she would actually care about that shit. Like, he's way too by the bucks for this thing. Like, he's not like he doesn't go on a one-man manhunt without completely resigning his post and having like he'd have to be already like so like pushed so far past the breaking point for that story to happen. Like, it makes zero sense. It's the worst episode in the show. It still has an interesting idea.
Yeah. But then it's followed by one of the best episodes of the season, Scar, which is the fighter pilot episode. There's that one ace Cylon raider out there that they can't quite get.
Yeah.
And Kat finally gets it. Fuck yeah.
It's because all the ships also reincarnate the same way as the humanoid Cylons. And so it had died so many times. It had just like Ready Player One, so that it was like the best you could possibly be.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
But there's a very similar kind of sequence in a recent X-Men comic. They have this whole situation where like the mutants can resurrect, and Nightcrawler.
Krakoa, the island.
So Nightcrawler has to infiltrate a base. And so he gets their permission. Like, normally they back up everyone like every hour. And so if you die, you just reset to the most recent hour. But they're like, okay, I need it like to the minute backups going on right now. Like, we're breaking all protocols. It's going to take a lot of hard drive space, but we got to do this. And he just teleports into a base and dies until he finally gets to the end. And it's like doing that whole like White House sequence from X2, but like where he's being constantly murdered the whole time and his bodies are just everywhere as he's trying to get through this whole situation.
Oh my god.
That John Hickman run of X-Men is really fucking good.
Yeah. Well, and Hickman left the book by that point,
like the ending is, but for the most part, it's 99% really fucking good.
Yeah. Anyway, so Scar is like that, and they set up that this character is like he has infinite lives to the point where he can just speed run in fights with the Vipers.
But at that point, the resurrection ship had been destroyed, so if they die, that's it.
Right. So now he's on his last life.
Last life. Yeah. Can't come back again. Yeah.
Good stakes. Yeah.
Or did they sever it at that point? Like,
no, the ending of the Pegasus arc is when they take out the resurrection.
They actually fully take it out. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're on their own.
Yeah, so like there are costs to both sides. Like it's a really interesting war because like it's like the situation where it was like fertilizer was properly developed during World War One because otherwise we actually wouldn't have had enough nitrogen to feed the people during the war type situation. Like that's the only reason why like Germany was able to keep fighting because otherwise they would have starved out of the battle.
That just oh god, that reminds me of Zone of Interest for a second. Oh god.
So it's like that situation where war is way more.
I'm not gonna spoil why that reminds me of Zone of Interest, but it's just
I'm not familiar.
I'm not either. So like,
should I? There's a moment when human ash is used to fertilize a garden.
Ew.
But
it's a really fucking good movie, and it's my favorites of the year. But there's a moment where I'm like,
yeah, I mean, and those kind of moments of desperation are really interesting to us because like it is actually a very real thing, and also in this period of where most scarcity is self-inflicted as opposed to in like a setting like this where legitimately they're running out of food, they're running out of, like there's a point where they're running out of water, they're running out of air, like they're in space, like we could barely function. And the cool part about the Battlestar, like the other ships are more advanced and it allows for them to have cheaper sets because you can just get some fabric and cover up a seat and make it look like a cabin of an airliner kind of stuff. But like the Battlestar specifically being such like a submarine, like feels so tangible and real, and like the innovation of doing, the Battlestar specifically is an old fashioned battleship designed to fight a computer hacker enemy. Like, and that's why they've got like no network computers, why they have wired phones, why all the things they point out in the opening, why all the airlocks and everything are like like physical hatches that are very tangible and real. It makes the whole thing feel so realistic or rather verisimilitudinous.
That's a word.
I believe that's the right
feeling
version.
That it's real. The feeling,
that you're like, oh, we could make this, right? Like it's not that insane to say that we could get there. And like the fact that even their FTL thing is such a we don't really like to do this. It's like everyone gets like really sick, and the Battlestar is really bad at it. Like the other ships have computers that work. It does not. It's like Dune.
They have to manually calculate their coordinates to where they're gonna go.
Yeah. Like they have to math prescience, which is like completely fucking insane. But you're like, I could imagine us like having someone smart enough to do. It's not full on. We're taking drugs to see the future level of math. Like
not yet.
Yeah, we're not quite there.
Another 10,000 years we'll get there.
But like you could envision like a Cold War piece of us versus the Russians, like outside of like Jupiter, where we're trying to get to Titan in like our two giant fucking frigates, which are like shipping containers with like guns tied to it, just like air tanks. Like that's what this feels like, and that is such a cool element of the piece that it brings you into it in a way that like. Sure, like yes, The Expanse, all these things that are like really great hard science that have been out there. This is a really early example in terms of like really good hard sci-fi on TV.
Yeah. And for example, just cut it real quick. For example, there's no windows on the Galactica.
Yeah.
I take that back. There's one window, the observation deck, and they take that out pretty quick. That's gone.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's gone pretty quick. But yeah, imagine waking up in the morning and you can't even see outside the ship. There's nothing to look at. It's just you'd lose your mind after a while.
Yeah.
And it holds to that thing that I bring up on every single space movie episode is, does this function as a Navy movie? Yes, it does. This is a submarine. This is a submarine story that you're hearing basically, and I like that makes it work that much better for me. Like truly, like having that like kind of root thing. I could watch this with my dad for sure, and he would be able to track along and be like, we're in the headquarters. They're calling out the orders. We jump into the ships, that are out over the water because this is an aircraft carrier. And
God damn it, this is a yacht rock movie.
We brought it around, baby.
We found it.
Yeah, they're listening to yacht rock on the Battlestar to stay calm. That's what it is. I love that it functions as a Navy movie like that.
Yeah,
props.
Yeah, and there's such like there's a very similar chapter in World War Z where like the Pacific Fleet, where there's like one battleship that's like protecting like all these like boats that are floating. And I think there's something really interesting about the stakes involved with that. Like it's particularly with Battlestar, where it is the last humans and that the stakes are so high because like literally it's our species as a concept is like contingent on this whole thing. Like I said, it's a diaspora piece, but like the Battlestar as this one vessel that is solely responsible for the protection of everyone, and they are not well set up to be the protection of everyone. Like despite the fact, like, or not despite, in spite of the fact that there are overwhelming odds on the enemy side, like regardless, the ship is a piece of junk. Like it is a relic that was being decommissioned. And like that is such a cool standpoint of like, this is the height of, well, they don't build them like they used to, but at the same time, like it's not really in a good position for so many things, just like on the normals. Like they're all better soldiers than what the equipment they have. They know that there's like, God, if we were on any of the other ships I've ever been posted to, this would not be a problem right now. But as a result, like I have not slept for more than 20 minutes for 4 days and everything is terrible and I'm going to die and there's no hot water.
Right. Relatable. Oh my God. That's just what anxiety feels like, you know?
Yeah. Seeing throughout the show as they slowly start to lose things. And there's one episode, I think it's the episode where Kara finally bites it. It was, she becomes the CAG and she says, "This is the final tube of Taron toothpaste. It's the last the tube of toothpaste in existence." It's like, oh, no one's gonna be able to brush their teeth anymore.
Yeah, there's an episode really early on where they have all memorized every card and every deck they have. Like
they get bored of playing cards.
all of the like imperfections of every card, because like there's little bins and there's little tears, little fingerprint marks or like scuffs. Like every like the players are all like sitting there and they don't have a deck that they have a card that they can't see both sides of effectively. Because they're so bored that they have only they're like, I know that is like the Queen of Hearts because it's got X, it's whatever their weird octagon shaped like cards or hexagon shaped like cards are. We should mention the books. God, I hate that part. That is so fucking it is there just to look like futuristic, and it is so fucking dumb that they cut the corners off.
Well, what had happened was that somebody on the production staff, when they said, we don't really have a lot of money to do all this kind of stuff, and somebody said, it's fine, just cut corners, it's fine. And they took that literally.
But
that's the beginning of a joke, and it just became what it is. And they just kind of said, "Oh, it's kind of cool.
Yeah,
let's do that."
I mean, like, as if it's
a
protest in there, like that would be fine. But if it's just like a total accident, it just feels dumb. And they kind of abandon it at a certain point. Like certain books are going to come up that don't have that issue, and it like. But it's inconsistent, and thus it feels like even less intentional. Like again, if it was an open protest piece, like that would be fascinating. But like as a just like, oh yeah, our books are missing a chunk for some reason, and we have no explanation for why. It doesn't make sense culturally. It's not like a 12 versus 10 count system difference, like where you're like, well, at least I understand that there's a root logic for why our clocks have 12 instead of 10. There it's up, that kind of like weird, like our number systems are different. This is just there for the sake of like looking weird.
Yeah. Seth, how did you feel about Baltar as he slowly lost his mind and he starts seeing visions of number 6? Did that work for you at all?
I could definitely sense the like greater Baltar looming threat that they were setting up here. So something that'll always work for me, especially when you're doing sci-fi, is the folly of the gods. I think that's why I'm still writing so hard on Ridley Scott's Alien stuff. And so to see this like character that all the tragedy that befalls him is because of his dick, basically, that is so Greek. Like that is Greek tragedy. I love that kind of storytelling, and the like the romance that they have kind of representing like humanity's love of technology being our downfall, that like we're blinded through like our emotional spectrum, that we're blind to the logical spectrum that lies behind technology. And so like it's kind of working on multiple levels for me. So I dug that a lot.
Here's a question about Baltar. It's a different actor than Dr. Bashir from Deep Space Nine, right?
I know it's not the same guy.
They look so
Yeah, but
similar to me.
so
I was
damn close,
convinced
though,
when the show
right?
came out.
So damn close.
And like
yeah.
right next to each other, especially as they've aged, it's like different. But it was like just a peak moment for the two of them where they like synced up too much.
Well, dude,
Yeah.
I'll give you another one within the series. Ian McShane and Edward James almost look identical to me at a certain point.
Yeah. You're right.
It's like a passing, like it's if you see them side by side, you're like, oh no. But if you see it in passing quick enough, it just they look the same.
Well,
to
especially in this because they're trying to Caucasify Edward James almost to a certain degree.
Yeah,
he's wearing blue contacts to make him look more like him look more like Apollo. So they're like doing like little details to try to like kind of blur the lines a bit. He's like Apollo's wearing bronzer.
I did double take that when I was meant to understand that Apollo was his son. I was like, really?
Yeah.
Truly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think also the blue context is a reference to his little role in Blade Runner, which also we have to bring up Blade Runner for a second.
Yeah, that fits in.
Like
here.
that's the fact that the Cylons look like us now. Not only does it work from a political perspective of like, anybody could be a terrorist. If you see something, say something.
Yeah.
Very post 9/11. Paranoia is everywhere. But it also works from a thematic level of, anyone among them could be an enemy. Like they don't know who the 12 Cylons are.
Mm-hmm.
The reveal of the last 5 is just like, fuck you.
Damn.
I'm not the biggest fan of the reveal of the last 5.
It's a bad twist there. I did realize
only one of the 5. Only one of the 5. I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense.
There is one.
The rest, I'm like, just
I will say rewatching this. Because like I knew enough that I knew that it was like, oh, there's supposed to be like 12 humanoid Cylons that we're going to eventually find out about. When I was rewatching this, and because it's been some time, I was like, oh, I wonder like if at any point they were like, those could include the other like robotic Cylons that also get backed up, like the ship and the drone, like those could theoretically be also in that like models of Cylon, which would be, I think, more interesting than what we ultimately got.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And also, it basically implies that the entire civilization of the original Earth, which was apparently all Cylon, by the way, the original civilization was just made of those 12 models. Like what? Where'd the rest of humanity come from then?
I mean, the articulation that I've seen from the creatives was that like this is supposed to represent like 12 archetypes of people. Which, then we also get into the 12 Lords of Kobol and all that kind of stuff.
All that like bullshit.
There's the religion aspects get weird in the show. Like the miniseries doesn't actually really touch on it that much. But they do actually come across Kobol, like the supposed like birthplace of humanity. And they encounter like mysticism where there appears to be like the workings of the gods, like of the Greek pantheon. And I think there's a few areas that kind of bugs me. Like one, the fact that they leaned into the Greek stuff, which I realize kind of is playing around with like what was in the original show as well. Despite the fact that the original show also had like pyramid stuff and everything to represent it as sort of like it's a Stargate situation of like similar culture, same root, different
ancient
outcome.
aliens and all that.
Yeah, there was a big book at that time that was talking about all of this as like a unifying religious theory and like lit
Chariots of the
sci-fi
Gods,
on Chariots of the Gods. You got it.
Yeah, it's a lot of stuff there, and like look, I don't think anyone can say that there's never been like an interesting version of that. I think there have been lots of interesting versions of that. But that
I can hear Mike Spielman screaming "Gods of Egypt" from another room.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's we also know there's been plenty of bad ones too. Like but the point is that like I know why they did it, and I could see it working really well. It's just that because they're going with some of the words that are the same, and it's like, I don't know. Like if you wanted to be like, this is sort of like a proto-Indo-European kind of like look at the pantheon type thing, I think I'd be more fascinated by that. The fact is we know too much about it, and we culturally know too much about it. Like the Greco-Roman situation by itself is one that we're aware that like there are different names for these same archetypal figures. And so it would be more interesting if they tried to be like Wotan instead of Zeus, like if they like led what I realize Wotan is really just the Germanic, but like or like Thnir, no. Like there's all these ones like where the wording actually, like if you like really like know the roots of how the language like drifted in those scenarios, you can see how Mars and Tyr are actually the same god, and there's the same thunder sky god character, all that kind of like logic that we sort of put together. And this even like against Proto-Indo-European. So like there's like all this part of like the Hindu pantheon that like sort of corresponds, and that we can see the root words, and because the other part is that language and divinity are all actually one concept. So like if you exist in an animist society where everything has a spirit, the name for everything is the deity of that thing. So that's why thunder and Thor are actually the same word, because he's the god of it, because he is it, like innately. So you could get into that and like really sort of build on that for the series, but because they're using the one that is like overtly the one that we all know very distinctly have shared names for other things, like it feels just like needlessly white.
It also logically doesn't make any sense, because when they get to Cobalt, nobody said we were just going to talk about the miniseries. We're talking about the whole show. Fuck it, we're talking about the whole show.
It's the Battlestar episode, folks.
When they get to Cobalt and they see they see the astrological signs that lead them, like there's the Cancer, there's Taurus, and there's all the things that say, it's like, if you think about it scientifically, they wouldn't know that because stars drift of
also, the constellations are relative to the positions
to the planet that you're on. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense why Cobalt would see that. So it doesn't. That's why I wanted to do a quick pitch for a film rescue for the end of the show when we get to the very end.
Yeah.
So, how we would fix this thing?
Right. Well,
I know how I would fix it. I'll just pitch it now.
It's fast. Sorry, go.
Just Planet of the Apes. They get there and it's the future, and it's like, oh yeah, Earth was destroyed. They made it there, and it's just Planet of the Apes. And there's maybe like remnants of old human civilization that have evolved, and now they have new humans there, along with the old style of humans. And it's kind of like the Cylons and humans, and it's kind of like they're interacting with each other.
Don't they do that in the first place, though? Don't they, like in season 4, they go to like the burned out husk of what was actually Earth, and then?
No, I'm not talking about like the original. I'm talking about like when they get to our Earth.
Right, but I'm saying like they would need to do something to make it more the part of the problem is they just like kind of find Earth.
They just kind of find it.
Yeah, and that it's like not that interesting a story. Like they spend too much time when they get there.
Wait, so they kind of find Earth, but he's like talking about Earth at the end of
the Earth that they originally find in the episode 10 of season 4. They have a crane shot where they go up and over, and it's actually New York. It is literally just the New York skyline. And it's just been destroyed by nuclear devices. It's just blown away. And so they just pile back in the ship, like, all right, that's it. Let's keep moving.
Yeah. Earth is dead. Fuck. Yeah. And then they keep moving on. And it's supposed to be like this big bummer, which, actually honestly would have been a perfectly fine situation itself. But what I'm saying is that like Planet of the Apes is just doing
originally that was going to be the ending because the writer's strike was happening. If they didn't get back to work on time, they would have been like, well, they made it to Earth and that's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Bye. Thank you for coming.
Shit. That sounds like the end of that Alien, the original pitch for Alien 4.
Yeah. So ultimately, like that kind of killed the ability for them to go to Earth. And at the end of the series, they find a proto Earth, and it's revealed to be our Earth, just like super far back in time, and that they interbreed, which is like, it's like human drift 101 kind of situation. Like it's like, oh, this is why Neanderthal DNA is in humanity. Like whatever. Like it's not interesting.
They should have just gotten there and it would be like our Earth, but it's 150,000 years in the future. And maybe like there's the slightest shades of old current day civilization there.
Well,
still. But
the other part of it is that they spend too much time. Honestly, they spend any time on Earth, like after finding it is too much. Like it's what was the Battlestar sequel series? Like Battlestar 1984, where they come to our Earth in our time. 1980. Yeah, like where they come to our Earth, and it's actually our Earth, and they have like rocket ships and stuff, and they're just like space people with like modern day humans. That would have been terrible. And doing a series about that would have been bad. Like they spend like 30 minutes of like the 2-hour finale on like ancient Earth. And there's no need. Like there's no story that you need to tell. We just know that like, oh, they found Earth. And then like it should be, they found the river valley, and now they're trudging through and there's resources and they lived happily ever after. We didn't need any more story to it. And the same would happen if they found a shitty Earth or a post-apocalyptic Earth. Having any time spent there opens them up for us being like, well, wait, what the fuck? Like it's too much room to breathe there. Like that should have just been a dramatic moment. And then the show's over.
Yeah. And the fact that it's just God that just leads them there. Literally God
also,
steps in and just like, boop, Yes, I cheated and I moved the chess piece to the other side of the board.
But is it Zeus or is it God?
Who cares?
Damn. Oh my God.
Right.
I mean, that's even pointed out of like when Angel 6 and Angel Baltar are like discussing, and then Caprica 6 goes,
God.
that too is in God's plan, and then Baltar goes, it doesn't like it when you call him that.
Yeah,
Like,
the series, like all of this is space to exist in sci-fi series. Like we also like weird.
That's the problem. It abandons the sci-fi after the 3rd season.
Right. There's too much divine.
It's just religion shit. Baltar becomes the head of a cult.
I don't mind him being the head of a cult. I mind that the cult actually has religious power. Like,
yeah, that is weird.
Wait, so like religious power as in over people, or as in like access to mystical things?
I don't know if I can explain this one in this time, and I know we've explained a lot so far. Like the angels start becoming active participants in the story in season 3.
Yeah,
and music starts playing in people's heads, and by music I mean there's like actually a pretty good cover of Jimi Hendrix, but like or Bob Dylan, but you know, yeah.
This
sounds very silly.
I will say the season 3 finale is kind of good, despite the when Starbuck just shows up again and just says, "I've been to Earth and I know where it is. I'm gonna take us there," and just pulls out all from the battle that they're going in. It exits the galaxy, flips the galaxy around, and goes in, and there's our Earth. But the problem is, when you look at that Earth, it's covered in lights. It's like implying there's civilization there. Oh, they changed this. They changed the plan because they rewrote the back half of the season during the writer's strike.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
It's
bad.
A bad choice. Like, and like it's a similar situation to Lost and a similar situation to Game of Thrones, where it's a strong start because they have a lot of good ideas of how they want to present a thing, but not necessarily great ideas about how they want to wrap it up. And like,
while we're on the subject of J.J. Abrams, I would like to go a little bit into the Star Wars finale of Rise of Skywalker and not having a plan.
Also there. But I would say that
I'll do it. I'll fucking do it.
Seth, don't kill yourself. We have one more film rescue for the season. Don't do it yet.
But I would say in terms of setting up a series, Battlestar Galactica as a soft pilot and as a refutation of the science fiction norms that had been coming out at that time, does a really good job of all of that, and it's allowed to do it because it uses Battlestar Galactica as a property, because it's using an established one where it's like we can get money for it. We've got like nods to it. People are going to tune into it because it is a reference to this thing. But it's a thing that also was lacking an identity of its own in a lot of ways. Like everyone knew what Cylons looked like because they have such a cool, distinct visual, but who really knew that they were actually like the robot servants of a reptilian race that's out there? Like,
they abandoned that.
They got rid of like all these like superfluous elements of the original that were just, there because it was tropey 70s sci-fi cashing in on the Star Wars craze. Like, it wasn't enough of its own property that it could be redefined, and it had a lot of cool looks. Like the original Battlestar Galactica looks really goddamn close to what we see in this. The model for this one is actually like a bit smoother, but the one for the Pegasus is almost identical to it. So like,
that's based on the original Battlestar.
It's really good looking.
The platypus on skis kind of thing.
It's really good looking in terms of being like what a battleship in space would look like. And the Vipers, and we have to talk about the Vipers, are so fucking
my favorite
cool.
ship design. It's my favorite ship design.
Right.
Absolute favorite starfighter design.
How do we not have like 1,000 Battlestar Galactica starfighter games? Like that would be so fun.
There's a really good one on Xbox.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Now
it's
original.
Based on the old series.
It's based on the old series, but it's a dogfight ship situation, which is such a great thing.
Yeah, I have it. It's upstairs. I have it.
I got it sit right over here. It's really good. Like it is like that. It is such a perfect version of like the World War II fighter pilot kind of situation. The launch tubes are so goddamn cool. Like like the realistic physics with it all. Like Starbuck as just like this hotshot pilot is such a good element of it all. The fact that we're using bullets and like the missiles are missiles when there are missiles, and like
so cool.
Like. And the way that they actually have to use math, and they have to be like, okay, we have to stay out of like the space that Galactica is just fucking shooting shit. And they're doing stuff with like dogfights that like like we referenced like Space Above and Beyond, we referenced Babylon 5. All of these are doing new types of ways of doing space fights in a TV show and just in general. But this one really like leaned into it because that was one of the things that was part of the original show that had an identity. Like the Viper 2 is the Viper from the original show. And I like that they have like the more updated Vipers that are the ones that are failing, and they get a couple of them that are fixed. And once the Pegasus joins, it becomes like a bigger part of the fleet. But it's like, here is like a bunch of like World War II planes, and we're going to put them against like the most advanced drone fighters of the modern era. And let's see how that goes, guys. It's going to be really exciting. Like it is difficult to articulate in a lot of fiction that is really driven by like this kind of concept of like hero vessels or hero like great man history kind of stuff. Like Star Trek doesn't have fighters, and like Star Wars doesn't have heavy ships. Like you've got your X-Wing fleets that lead in, but you very rarely have like, here's a full battleship. And when you do, it's like they're kind of in the background. They're not like Akbar's there and it's cool, but he's not like a big part of the third Death Star, or pardon me, the second Death Star fight, the third movie like kind of fight. The fact that the Battlestar is a big participant, which again is new to this series, and then you've got the aircraft carrier component, like, and that we're going to really capture that and really like make that this cool element of, again, this very noble part of the story where like the Battlestar is the defender, or the Battlestar Galactica, the Galactica is the defender of the last of humanity, of like what is it, 5,000 people, like 50,000 people, like a bottleneck of humanity so tight that even if they found a planet tomorrow, they wouldn't necessarily have enough breeding pairs to repopulate the planet. Yeah, like it is that tight of a population. Like, like whatever, like the inflated numbers of the Toba catastrophe aside, like it was still like 100,000 breeding pairs, like or more. Like like we're like, even in the most apocalyptic ones, like none of them were like, some people like exaggerated to 10,000, but like 100,000 was like kind of what we're like the most cataclysmic version of like, oh, almost all of humanity was wiped out at this moment, or almost all the cheetahs, which is why they all are so prone to disease, were wiped out by this genetic bottleneck. This is that, like, but worse. And they're at war against a superior foe.
Yeah, the odds are not in their favor.
No, and so it is so noble to be on the Battlestar Galactica, because every single person there is doing their part to keep humanity alive. And so, like, even if you're just the fucking janitor, like, it's depressing as hell, and after a while, it's going to grate on you. But at the same time, you're doing a goddamn job.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one thing that's pointed out in the first Lucy Lawless episode. Was it Final Cut, where she's a news reporter? A news reporter. Surprise! She's a Cylon.
Cylon.
But yeah, but there's a moment where it's like they're reporting about how no one in the Galactica has tried to resign from their position, despite the fact they're already like so deep into the war. Like no one's asked to resign, because it's like, well, where are you gonna go?
Yeah,
what are we gonna do? What would you do? You would just sit in the fleet and do nothing. Just wait until you maybe died or made it to the next civilization. So hopefully, no one's asked. Hopefully, yeah. But yeah, the miniseries really delves into the fact that even at the end of humanity, there's still that last glimmer of hope. Like the saying that came from Edward James Olmos, "So say we all." Apparently, he just made that up. Yeah, apparently that was not in the script. Apparently, where he just said "so say we all." That was apparently just made up by Edward James Olmos.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Apparently, it was just made up on the spot, and they were just kind of went with it.
Or at least his like crying out and getting them going for it. They may have had like the priest like saying it as part of like, just your generic platitudes. And
yeah,
then
but his chant.
Yeah, him like like saying it, like building it up. He's such a good fucking scald. Like he's such a this, like him as the commander, and like, one thing that he did invent in this was like when they do the comm system, it's like a telephone, and he flips it upside down because he doesn't give a shit if anyone says anything back to him. He is just talking into it as a microphone, because it's such a strong performance. Like this whole piece is brought together. Like there's all these great ideas, but like they have a fantastic cast. They have such cool design. It feels so tangible and real, and it was doing something so fresh from what sci-fi was doing, especially on TV. But even in the movies, like it had been a long time since 2001: Space Odyssey. Like there have been like niche like hard sci-fi things, but usually they're not like on this scale. Usually it's not about a fleet of ships that feel like real ships. Like it's no surprise that like Colonial One feels like a plane that we've all been on. Like just like not even
Yeah.
like that much of a like a weird like you know.
It's just Air Force One.
Yeah, I mean it's
just
supposed to be Air Force One, but it's like honestly like it's more just like a regular kind of like small passenger plane, like private plane that you can hire kind of situation. Like it's not that well stocked, and like there's so many ships that are like these interesting designs that are like playing on like all the different types of vessels that you might find at sea or find in the air, or all these things that have iconography that you can look at and be like, oh, I see that, and it's in space.
Right.
It feels real. It felt cool. It was really fresh at the time.
Yeah. And every sci-fi show after this copied it. Also, I want to note that before we wrap up, this ate up all the budget of Sci-Fi Channel at the time.
Really? Oh my God. I bet.
Because all the shows that surrounded Battlestar, there was like, what was it, Warehouse 13, Eureka, there was that Flash Gordon show that lasted for like a season. It's like all of them looked cheap as dirt. And it's because all the money was being funneled to Battlestar because it was always over budget.
Yeah, yeah.
So you can see it in like the later seasons. You're like, yep, they went over budget. You can see it, and that's why every single show now costs like $20 million an episode.
I mean, it was a victim of its own petard. Ultimately, like it's not so much in the miniseries because the miniseries was shot on film, but when they get to the series. They were shooting in digital and they were shooting in HD, and all of a sudden they actually had to have higher like texture quality than what they had in the miniseries. They had to like redo a lot of like props and set pieces.
Those toaster models do not look good now.
Well,
they do not look good.
That's the CGI part, but I'm talking about the actual set stuff. Like what they were filming in didn't look good enough. Yeah. And so they had to like redo all these assets just to like be up to snuff for this like burgeoning technology. So like it was inflating a budget in a way that like sci-fi hadn't had to have that expense before.
Yeah.
And like TV didn't have that expense before.
Yeah. What a risk, overall.
Go back, go watch the Blu-ray versions of Star Trek Next Generation. You'll see all the imperfections on the set.
Yeah. Or like the coffee stains on their shirts and stuff.
the screws that are in the set on the consoles, like, that doesn't look right.
Yeah. Oh, we deal with this like again, I work on Star Trek fan films. Like we deal with this all the time because we're shooting in fucking 8K.
Yep.
Yeah. You got to cover it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I know we dunked on this show a lot in this episode, but I want to say it's still probably one of the best shows ever made, and probably one of the most important shows. So much got ripped off from this show. Like The Expanse wouldn't exist without this. Last Jedi wouldn't exist without this. The way in which you shoot digital effects would not exist without this. And everybody says, "Oh, well, no one was watching the show in the later seasons." Well, if you look at the way that they gauge that, the Nielsen ratings was how they were gauging that. No one was watching it as normal time because it was in a terrible time slot.
Yeah.
But because of time shifting, which they weren't counting at the time, now that's normal because everything's just like streaming and on demand.
Right.
If you counted that, it was one of the highest watched shows of all time.
Yeah.
Damn.
I mean,
people were watching. It was just not when it was airing on television.
Right. Like DVR was a thing at this point.
TiVo was a thing.
TiVo on demand was a thing at this point, and the DVDs were a big thing. Like this is a series that had one of like those big web series, like the same, like the way The Office did, where it was like show level quality just for like snippets because like we just hadn't figured out like regular streaming yet. Like this is all this was such a prestige show that so many people were talking about. Like if you look at the actual ratings for the finale, it's like MASH.
Yeah.
It's huge. Yeah. Before we wrap up, I want to point out one thing. Richard Hatch, late Richard Hatch, who was Apollo in the original series, he shows up as a character in the new series. He plays Tom Zarek, kind of like a Che Guevara revolutionary type. He was adamantly against this remake, and then they just said, "Well, you want a job?" And he said, "Yes, I do."
Talk about an olive branch.
Yeah, I will say his arc in that series, when they get to the kind of takeover of the Galactica in the 4th season, is really fucking.
Yeah, they do interesting stuff with him. Like the characters have interesting arcs.
Yeah, every character got an interesting arc. I mean, except for Starbuck, who just comes back for no reason.
Apollo in the last 2 seasons.
All right, I think that's enough. But yeah, it's like, I know we dumped on this. Seth, do you feel, do you understand why I like this show so much now?
I do. And I almost expected it going into it. I don't know if you've ever seen the Portlandia episode where they get addicted.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Where Ron Moore shows up as the character. He's like, and somebody's like, "Have you ever watched this show?" He's like, "No, is it good?" Yes, that is literally Ron Moore.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. That I knew I was in for it, and so I like sitting down to watch it. I was definitely seeing why this was high on your list. This definitely, honestly, I want more stuff like this. Like, what it feels like this is kind of a gap in our film area right now, where like I feel like the only time
the Expanse,
yeah, like
Expanse is just Battlestar.
The Expanse is it, but like, where are the movies in this kind of harder edged, battle sci-fi without going into like a red box? You know what I mean? Like
that might be the next wave. Frankly, I feel like the MCU is kind of a counter response to this one, where we get into some more fanciful kind of elements of it. Like, it's military washed.
Yeah.
Like it's like there's a reason Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk were like the launch of the MCU, where it's like here's war machines and steroids, and we can explain that really easily. And like the choice of which characters was very deliberate in terms of that, but it still is ultimately this much more escapist kind of fantasy kind of setting. And in terms of like the sci-fi stuff, Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's like let's be weird, let's not be realistic, let's have all the crazy shit out there. And there, I'm sure, will be a backswing at some point, but like at the moment, it was the return of Star Wars and the return of the high adventure in space kind of part when you do sci-fi. And this was the other end, and it shows that like you can really enjoy both ends.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Rebel Moon.
I mean, how do you feel about the first half of A Bug's Life being turned into a whole movie?
I've never seen A Bug's Life, so I couldn't.
I mean, we're just doing. So you were talking about just Seven Samurais, but the first act.
Yeah, Seven Samurai, but the first act. Yeah. It's like, or the other example is not what is it? Fuck, I just had it on the tip of my tongue.
Well, I do have a counterpoint for Seth while you're thinking. Like Denis Villeneuve is like a good counterpoint. Like Dune and Blade Runner 2049 are both like excellent like companion pieces to this, in terms of like, here is like some realistic, like kind of gothic level of like sci-fi horror of it all, where it's like, here's these massive structures of like where humanity has become so small and insectile in this world. Like, that's what BST is doing, where they're all on the ship. In this scenario, it's like, well, the ships don't even matter. The worlds are just like so oppressive, and you're just such a tiny little cog.
No, I hear you on that too. I think those are, especially Villeneuve as a director, is a great representation of like this as the edge of what I like. It doesn't quite fall into this military battle complex though. Like, I like that this is dogfights and sea battles, and like your Villeneuve stuff is very like character driven and character based. Like, they're like,
it's grounded.
Yeah. And I like
that was what I was going to mention, Warhammer, when they really get that TV show.
Yeah. Well, I could see Warhammer feeling this. The Fallout show is definitely going to have some feelings of similarity here, just for having the more futuristic battle hardened setting. I'm just I'd like to see some more military battles in space, kind of as a harder edge, not the more Disney end of it. It's Master and Commander in space, please, is what I'm asking for, I guess.
Yeah. They kind of got there with some of the new Star Trek shows a little bit. I think Discovery kind of did that for a bit, but that kind of goes against what Star Trek is.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's like, so.
Yeah,
I think it was was it Discovery season 2, where it's that giant fucking battle where the two ships are inverted to each other, and it's just like a fucking, oh god, I hate that show so much.
Yeah, I said,
I hate Discovery.
I think that we're just kind of at a different end of the spectrum. Like, we as a culture, like like what? Because there is a military propaganda component of it, like, and like even if it is a dissection of a lot of that, like, that component is one that you need to be in a certain mode, and and part of that mode is the creative mode. Like, it's hard to write that in a period where we are kind of disgusted by some of the militarization of the state that we exist in. So like that, it's hard to even make the piece, even if the piece is ultimately like a dissection and condemnation of the society that it is a part of. Like, the society that we are a part of now, much more creatively, we are acknowledging like, yeah, we can't have like rah cops and rah military guys, and like it feels kind of gross to write.
Yeah.
And like I'm sure that'll shift as we have like different situations, but you need to have a new take on it where it's going to feel dynamic and interesting and fresh, and not just feel like I feel kind of dirty looking at it. Like so we'll see where we get, and like I'm not necessarily like it's the weird juxtaposition of like, I love this, I hate the culture that produced it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there's talk of that new Battlestar pilot that's supposed to be in development right now.
I'd check out new Battlestar. This feels like it could take visual touch-ups anytime.
But I don't know what you do. It's like they were talking about doing, like, there was supposed to be a series that took place after the end of the last episode where the Cylons came back and they land on Earth, and that never really got made because the plan ran it into the pavements. There was talk about that. That didn't get made.
Well,
there was the prequel, Caprica, which nobody liked, and then there was supposed to be a TV show, Blood and Chrome, which then just got turned into a movie, and it was like, that was it for Battlestar. Now there's talk of doing another series. Originally, Bryan Singer was going to produce it, and then all that shit about him came out, and he dropped out.
Yikes.
But, yeah, so there's been talk of doing this for a long, long time. But it's like, what do you do now? You've done the goofy, silly space opera stuff, and you've done the militaristic stuff. There's no...
I've got a counterpoint.
There's no middle ground anymore.
No,
Mass Effect.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Mass Effect.
Mass Effect, I think, is doing the same. I mean, it's obviously inspired by this in a lot of ways. But I think it's doing it in a new... where it works is... Yeah, it's embracing like all sci-fi because it's also very Lensman, so it's like very space opera as well. But it's you're controlling the characters and you're kind of shaping it to the version you want. You can have it be much more like energetic, high adventure, and you can have it be much more gritty, realistic, based on your decisions and this type of story you're trying to build out. Mm-hmm. So that exists as an option in all versions of that, including Andromeda. But like, there's a new one coming out, and like we've just got the Legendary Edition, and I think that's doing that kind of a story. It's just it media skipped.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the way it is now. It's like every generation gets a new version of the old thing.
Well, and like I could even take a new take on it, like along the lines of what the creator wanted to talk about with like, what if there were good Cylons? What if there was an internal, dispute amongst the Cylons about like, hey, actually, maybe this isn't ethical, and maybe we can work alongside like.
They do it.
That's season. They do it season 4
and 2.
Cylon Civil War.
The whole Cylon
there's literally a Cylon Civil War.
Like the whole new Caprica thing is because they try to be nice.
Oh, well, see, I dig that. I dig that kind of, maybe you go deeper into that. Maybe you talk about a world where where there are like, Cylons within the Battlestar forces that they trust, you know what I mean? Like kind of
ongoing, yeah, because they deal with like some of that in the show, but the show just kind of like ends too quickly for it to like. There's a really cool like Cylon squad that works with them. That like there's like great scenes of them doing like hand signals and stuff, which is like I thought was like actually like really fun, where like they're working as military units, but it's like only in the last like 2 or 3 episodes where it's like really a part of the show. Which kind of sucks. Like it again, like the show had like good moments throughout the whole time, even up to and including the finale. And so like that's kind of a bummer that like it just didn't quite get it right. Like I wouldn't say it failed just as bad as Game of Thrones, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
But in both scenarios, there are moments that are like, oh, I could see how this could be better. And like Game of Thrones, we can hold on to the books as like an idea of like, oh, that might do it right. That might give it a film rescue or another pass.
If that last book ever fucking comes out.
But I will say that the show has so much going for it that it's hard not to look fondly and not to like take new things looking at it. Like rewatching New Caprica in our current conversation about Gaza is going to be a really weird experience. Because it is literally doing that and like trying to be like, well, this is why some of your friends who are like really good people support Israel, even though they're murdering people like that, because they have that conversation in there with the Cylons who are sympathetic and you actually kind of start to like, and that, but they're at the same time, the reason the worst things happen to people because they're kind of like splitting this and not like, the show is really interesting. There's a lot of stuff that's too complicated and too complex, especially for this era of TV, but like it's just too complex for like a limited group of writers because there was probably a lot of white people like to do a really good version of it ultimately and be nuanced enough.
Honestly, I could take a version where, if we want to do a less white centric version of it, have like a battleship for some of the different continents, you know what I mean, of Earth, and then you could have like maybe a slight Afrofuturism spin on one of the ships. You could, kind of like maybe dial up some of the more visual aspects of your series. Instead of trying to like retread some of the
they kind of delve into that. Each
go.
Yeah, the Pegasus is based around one of the each colony has its own fleet, basically.
Yeah.
And each planet has its own like group of people that represent that ethnicity. Like the Taurons are kind of like, what is it? Is it Greco-Roman? I believe is what.
Yeah, I mean it's Michelle Forbes specifically, so it's that sort of like.
Well,
like,
in the prequel Caprica, it says that the Taurons are mainly Greco-Roman.
Oh.
Yeah, but it is a super narrow line to walk before you get into like, oh well, here's all the black people ship, which would be a very uncomfortable situation. Even if it is done well, like let alone if it is done poorly, because it could be done very, very poorly. So
sure,
that's just like it. Like, where do you go on that one? And like this writing staff, which again, like I don't know everyone who was working on it, but I know enough people who are working on it to be like, yeah, this is kind of like white people who are fairly woke talking about some of the issues during a very like militaristic time. And like how much can we give them? Could be worse, could be better, could be a lot worse. Like we'll give them flack. It didn't all land, but I think overall like it's a piece that I'm really happy to look back at, and like I loved it. I was so happy that like to go back and look at this thing and be like, this is so fucking cool. And like I felt so it felt like I can remember watching it with friends where I'm like, you got to fucking see this thing. It's so goddamn good. And like having that sentiment be shared and like people just being like it gets your heart pumping in a way that has a lot of like that fuck yeah energy. And like it's hard to explain that if you haven't seen it.
Yeah. The scene I was thinking of is when Adama is told that Hilo and Teal are going to be executed for stopping Boomer's rape, and Michelle Forbes is going to execute them publicly, and he just says, "I want a Marine strike team ready to attack the Pegasus right away." and that music that's playing is just like, it's just this militaristic porn. It's like, yeah, fuck yeah!
Oh,
it's the ultimate fuck yeah when the Galactica and the Pegasus literally turn at each other, ready to fucking shoot. It's just like, oh, this is fucking awesome. That's probably one of the best episodes of the entire show, like hands down. Like not the best arc, but that one episode is just fucking
it's
great.
up there with like a best of both worlds from Star Trek kind of thing.
Yes.
So I know we have to wrap, but I will say that we've said music several times. We should say Bear McCreary. Like he and Ronald D. Moore have teamed up at Sen, so that like so much so when I was like trying to listen to a lot of music from Battlestar, I was listening to a lot of Outlander music because it was just like all mixed in. Because Bear McCreary does some amazing tracks, and it is a great mix of this like folky kind of music, but also with this intense war stuff, and it is really well done. They really nail just like so much of what they're trying to go for vibe wise. Like everything about the show is just very well done. The miniseries is such a perfect encapsulation of that, of the promise of the series, and the series is off to a great start, and it does stumble. But man, when it is hitting its highs, it is hitting its highs so hard, and it hits so many highs in the first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
When Bear McCreary is well known, I think a lot for video game music at this point. He did the most recent God of War games.
Oh, okay. Like, there you go.
He's known for that. He did the Walking Dead scores. Like he's one of the best composers right now. He's one of the best. He's very well respected in the community right now.
Damn, nice.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that's Battlestar. 20 years. It's got its problems. I would say the ending kind of sucks. Just headcanon that it's a Planet of the Apes ending, and it fixes a lot of problems. It fixes a lot of problems. It's not the past; it's the future. It fixes a lot of problems. So yeah, I'm glad you finally got to see this, Seth. Does it make Last Jedi look even worse by comparison?
I definitely see how much better it could have been if the Empire had been a little more cold, calculating, and evil, like the Cylons.
Yeah. What if it was like the ships were like constantly having to like go to warp for like 5 seconds just to go off in various directions, and they just keep catching up to them like every 5 seconds. They have to keep going and going. They burn out the engines, and they're constantly having to repair them over and over and over again. That would add tension.
Yeah.
Right.
Again, that's the interesting part about Empire Strikes Back, like where they keep on having issues with their FTL. Like
They're constantly having engine problems.
Yep.
See, it's like poetry. It's like they rhyme.
Yeah.
Each stanza kind of rhymes with the last one. Hopefully it'll work.
Well, meanwhile, in terms of this episode, there must be some way out of here.
Oh God, yeah. When they bring in that song, it's like it's a good cover, but it's like why is it?
Well, guys,
never explained. Never
no,
explained.
no.
But yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
That we're not even gonna get into
Yeah.
it. No.
Guys,
The more we speculate, the less it makes
I'm
sense.
so happy to be talking about this with you all. This was such a great chat. This was a lot of fun. Like I really enjoyed the series and just thinking about it. And it's like I was just thinking about stuff. Like it's such a fun series to look at.
Yeah. Merry Christmas, everybody. This is a little sci-fi treat for us to end the year.
Yeah, some good hard sci-fi for the first 3 seasons.
Also, fuck, I'm old. 20 years, God.
Yeah, like when I saw it was 20th anniversary, I was like, oh God damn it! I literally just felt my hair starting to turn.
Yeah,
gray.
it was that Matt Damon
fuck.
from Saving Private Ryan gif right there.
Right.
Oh God.
Heard.
Oh man. All right. I think we've had enough for tonight. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
So say we
Merry
all.
Christmas.
So say we all.
So say we all.